Next, we will hear from Mark Wolfe, the Executive Director of the National Energy Assistant Directors Association. This association represents the state directors of LIHEAP program. Prior to his current position, Mr. Wolfe has served at the U.S. Treasury as well as at our own Congressional Research Service. Today, Mr. Wolfe will present an overview of the LIHEAP program and discuss the current state of affairs, given the energy forecast that Mr. Caruso will share with us. We will look forward to hearing what states are doing to prepare for the winter and following summer in regard to the LIHEAP program.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to testify on behalf of the National Energy Assistance Directors Association, or NEADA, on the importance of the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program in meeting the heating and cooling needs of some of the nation's poorest families. NEADA represents the state LIHEAP directors. Members of NEADA would first like to take this opportunity to thank the members of the subcommittee for its continued program support and working to increase funding for LIHEAP. By way of background, there are 4 components to the LIHEAP program. The block grant, providing formula grants to states to help low-income families pay their heating and cooling bills. It also allows states to transfer up to 15% to pay for the companion program, weatherization, which helps families reduce their energy costs through conservation. Emergency contingency funds that can be released by the administration for a number of reasons, including natural disasters, rapid increases in home energy prices, high unemployment rates, and other economic conditions. The Residential Energy Assistance Challenge Grant, providing competitive discretionary grants to states to develop new strategies to assist households in reducing their home energy burden. And lastly, the Leveraging Grant, which provides states with additional incentives to raise non-federal funds for energy assistance. In addition, the law also authorizes the appropriation of advanced funds 1 year before the start of the program year in order to allow states to plan for the design of their programs. This is especially important in years when the appropriation for the federal fiscal year is delayed, as it's likely in this year, and states and cold weather states have to start their programs without knowing the final appropriation level. The LIHEAP appropriation level for FY 2007 was $2.1 billion, of which $1.98 billion was for the block grant, and $181 million was allocated for emergency contingency funding. Of this amount, $27.3 million of the block grant was set aside for the REACH and leveraging programs. No advance funding was appropriated. For FY 2008, the appropriation level as provided in the FY 2008 Labor, Health, and Human Services Appropriation Act as passed by the Congress would provide the same level for the block grant but increase emergency contingency funding by $250 million, from $181.5 million to $431 million. As in FY 2007, again, no advance funding was appropriated. The President's budget would have reduced the LIHEAP basic grant to $1.5 billion and provided $282 million in emergency contingency funds. This, in fact, would have been a devastating impact on the program. At the minimum, we would have had to eliminate at least 1 million families on the President's budget. The authorized level for LIHEAP was increased from $2 billion to $5.1 billion by the Energy Policy Act. The Act also continued the authorization level for emergency funds at $600 million. And I included a table in my testimony showing the allocation of the $5.1 billion. Who receives LIHEAP? More than 70% of families receiving LIHEAP have incomes of less than 100% of the federal poverty level, which is $20,650 for a family of 4, and 44% of incomes of less than 75% of the poverty level, which is $15,500 for a family of 4. Families receiving energy assistance carry a higher energy burden than most Americans, spending about 15% on home energy bills compared to about 3.4% for all Americans. A major concern of state energy officers this year is the declining purchasing power of the program. This is largely because federal funding has just not kept up with the rise in energy prices. Unfortunately, energy prices are soaring. Home heating prices objected by the Energy Information Administration could reach almost $1,000 this year for a typical family, an increase of almost 80% over the cost of home heating during the winter of 2001-2002 and 47% more than the year 2002-2003. And just by fuel type, this is what really concerns us. In 2003, it cost $951 to heat your home with heating oil. This coming year, according to the Energy Information Administration, it's $18.41. We think it will go even higher because global prices are approaching $100 a barrel. We think it goes as much as $2,200, which would be just plain devastating for low-income families in the Northeast. Natural gas has gone from $600 to $900 during this period. Propane from $926 to $622. And again, propane tends to track oil prices. Electricity has gone from $697 to $845. And this is just not an issue of home heating. Electricity is used for cooling. And across the South, we're looking at rising electricity prices. We're very, very concerned about the impact of these prices on cooling, especially in that part of the country. We've been tracking and trying to put this in perspective in terms of rising energy prices show how the purchasing power is declining. And, for example, 4 years ago, heating oil would buy about 36.7% of the average cost. I'm sorry, the grant would buy about 36.7% of the cost of home heating. With heating oil, now it's about 20%. Natural gas would pay more than 50% of the cost of home heating. Now we're down to 37. Propane, 37, down to 22, and so on. What it's showing is that the grant is not keeping up with the increase in prices. The other factor that's of concern is from 2003 and 2007, the number of households receiving energy assistance increased by 26% from 4.6 million to about 5.8 million in 2007, or about 15.6% of the eligible population. During the same period, the federal appropriation increased by only 10%, with the resulting average grant declining from $349 to $305. This would not be a problem if energy prices were decreasing proportionally or remaining stable. So what does this mean for 2008? We started surveying states about a week ago to say, well, what are you planning to do? You know, if grants stay about the same level, or the appropriation stays about the same level, goes up by 10%, how do you set your grants? And what I thought they were going to do was say, look, we're going to follow the same pattern as previous years. We'll decrease the grant in order to adjust to increasing applications. Instead, what they've decided is that the grant has reached the point where it can't be decreased any further. And so what they're deciding to do in the absence of additional funding, this includes the $250 million that's in the budget passed by Congress, they're projecting decreases of 10 to 20% on the number of families that can be served. So we're expecting to go from about 5.8 million in 2007 to about 4.9 million families. It increased the average grant to about $305 to $400 on average. This would really be tragic in several ways because with rising energy prices, we're expecting more families to come into the program. I think one more thing I'd just like to mention, we have a strong partnership with utilities. And part of those programs, especially around the areas of arrearage management, are not working as well as families have fewer dollars to match the kinds of matching programs we have to make up for overdue payments. And so what we're seeing is a very, very stretched program. Additional funding for LIHEAP can help to address rising arrears and shutoffs, allow the states to reach out to vulnerable households, and avert the type of hardships that we know happen when families do not have sufficient funds to pay their home energy bills. Adequate funding for LIHEAP can help families avert the need to choose between paying their heating and cooling bills, other vital household necessities like food, medicine, and other essentials. The authorized level of $5.1 billion will provide sufficient funds to increase grant levels to adjust for inflation and energy prices and allow states to reach out to eligible households who are not currently receiving assistance. Thank you for this opportunity to testify today. I welcome any questions or requests for additional information.